Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. I am so excited to introduce you to an amazing author from Germany by Skype, Ulf Lehmann. Mr. Lehmann, I'm sorry I mispronounced your first name. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm excited to be on the show, so yay.
Great. So, Shattered Dreams.
Yeah.
Tell me how you got into this book and all the elements that come into it, because I have to say, it was definitely an epic fantasy that was easy to follow, fun to read where you wanted to chase it to the very last page. But there is some pretty horrific chapters that were worse than any I've read in Grimm, and I've read all of them.
Okay. How did I get there? It started almost 30 years ago, pretty much. I got into a fantasy club and I wanted to do it. It basically was a quote unquote literature club, and they met for conventions and, well, they partied a lot. And initially I was just there for the partying. And then I said, okay, being drunk all the time is fun, but I want to do something else with my time as well. So I developed Drangar. Drangar is the first character I developed, and I wanted to do something, different with him. And it took me years and years, and then I left the club. And then it still took me years to figure out how to approach the story correctly. So, and then I had to move away from fantasy, from what I read. I stopped reading fantasy and I went for everything else. And I figured, okay, if I want to do this, I want to do it with the pacing of the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. I wanted to have something that keeps the story driving chapter by chapter by chapter, so that you really, if you're into the story, that you can just, not put it down anymore, because that's what happened to me even after the second read through of Da Vinci Code. So, yeah.
Wow. Definitely has elements of the Da Vinci Code in that it keeps the reader tuned in so that they want to keep reading. And they have 498 pages to read, so that was great, because you're like, okay, I'm not there yet. There's more. Something has to turn around for somebody here. And then, but the first chapter is like horrifying. Horrifying.
Yes,
I was like, it's so horrifying, it takes your breath away. How did you come up with that?
Initially, chapter 3 was my first chapter, and I was like, okay, this doesn't do the job, because I wanted to pull the reader in. I said, okay, by hook or by crook, either the reader stops reading after the first chapter, or he wants to know what goes on. What the hell is going on there? So I said, okay, I need to write a new first chapter, which is the second chapter. Now, it still didn't do the job. And then I said, okay, I want to do something that is so out of the ordinary, something so disturbing, something that basically stomps into the ground all the cliches I hate about Hollywood. So I was like, okay, which cliches do I hate the most in Hollywood movies? And one of them was, no matter what, kids are sacrosanct. They will not come to harm. And I was like, okay, that goes out of the window. And because in one of the disaster movies with a volcano, the dog and the kids survive. Everyone else dies, but those two groups. And I was like, that's wrong. That's not what really happens. I mean, how many kids died in Dresden, for instance? So I was like, okay, let's take that and make it Hansel and Gretel meet Saw. So that's what I did.
Wow. Where did you come up with some of the ideas, and where did you model the locations in this book after?
The location. I live in a medieval town. We have one castle ruin and two castles within like 3 to 5 kilometers. So some of the pictures I put in the shared folder for you were actually taken at the ruin. My sister and I went up there, and she snapped photos of me. And some parts of my hometown are this old. The church is 600 years old. So the buildings are pretty much inspired from where I live. Aside from the Elven city, the Elven city was basically, I had the Roman ruins in mind. I love Rome, so that was my shorthand there.
Wow. So in your town, it's definitely medieval. Is there folklore that takes place in the forest, or any forbidden area surrounding the town?
No, not at all. That just came from my mind. That was like
Not your
everything.
imagination when you were 6 or 7?
Nope. When I was 6 or 7, I was into, believe it or not, the Odyssey. So we have audio plays here where actual actors play through the thing and with narration and whatnot. And I got into those things really early on. So I was thinking at age 6, I was more thinking along the lines of cyclopses and whatnot.
Oh my gosh. What about the little bits of romance that play into it? Did you read a lot of romance novels?
I read one romance novel. One.
When?
Yeah. I wasn't able to get through the second one. And that was unintentional. That was complete. The romance part, romantic part, that it was utterly unintentional. I write listening to music. So when I wrote the first chapter, what now is the first chapter, I listened to the soundtrack of 13 Ghosts. I don't know if you've watched the movie. It's some really sick stuff. And then I got another CD, Celtic Romance, which has one of my all-time favorite songs, The Blood of Cuchulainn, on there, which is like the introductory song for the Boondock Saints. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to listen to this while writing. Little did he know. Yeah, so my mood overcame me, and all of a sudden this chapter was there, and I was like, I didn't intend to write this. So, but I did.
Oh, so there's a hidden romantic side to you.
Yeah. But I also I didn't know sensitivity readers when I wrote the book. So I went to a woman I knew here. She is well versed in English. So I said, okay, read this chapter. Just read it, and tell me afterwards what you think. And she was like, ooh, hat cinema. So I was like, okay, I got that right.
Did people have the same reaction as me to the first chapter?
I haven't asked that many people about the first chapter, to be quite honest. I was just like, okay, I really said, I need to write a chapter that either turns people completely off so that they won't read the rest of the book, or they'll go like, I need to know more. Would you like to know more? That was my initial intention, and I have heard of people who were so shocked by it, who said they didn't want to read any further, and I'm fine with that.
See, I was hoping for some good after that, and you delivered. And you made it an exciting journey,
Yeah.
and you gave us both sides of the coin on the bad guys, the villains, how they got to where they are.
Oh, that's still in the books. That's still there. The entire okay. So some people think the first chapter is just a one-off, fire and forget, but it's not. The first chapter is not a fire and forget chapter. It in the end it will all tie together. So,
Yes.
but it's going to take a while because, for obvious reasons, this is the story of Drangar. So his story comes first, and it still links up with everything at the end. But I'm not going to say what the end is. So you got to read those books. I'm sorry.
No, and it's completely worth reading.
I'm
It deals
I'm
with a
really
lot of social issues.
yeah, it does. And well, I like to think when I read. I like to get involved in the reading, and the more issues in whatever world are being dealt with, the more intimate it becomes to me. So that's how I write.
Right. No, it's, you did push the reader to think about it. Like, what would I have done in this situation? How could I have overcome that fear and just move?
Precisely. Yeah, and for me, it's always well. I come from my background is in role playing. I used to play D&D all the time. So, but the intimacy for me as a reader is always trying to figure out why are people doing something? What motivates them? Because if you ooh, I'm just the bad guy, I need to kill these people. That's like that's shoddy writing. Excuse me, but almost. and and I don't like that. I've been reading these stories, Dragonlance, whatever, Forgotten Realms, for so long, and I hated it in the end because it's always good versus evil. But if you look around in the world, in our world, there's there is no good, there is no evil per se. People are always kind of in the middle. I mean, let's face it, even Hitler had a dog, and he loved that dog. So there's always another aspect to anyone.
Right. And you did make them well-rounded characters. They weren't completely evil. Some had some redeeming qualities. Some are so unforgivable that you were never going to forgive them anyway. And the ends justified it. Um, but it was really creative in the way that you brought characters about, unlike the Grimm brothers, who were really, direct and straightforward. These characters developed along the way before you found out what they really were. And that was
Yeah,
really key to keeping me just in tune, like, I gotta read more.
yeah.
It was one that I kept picking up, and I'm like, I can squeeze a chapter in here, or I took it with me everywhere for a week.
Okay, that's amazing. I love that. I really do love that because you're the person, you're the kind of reader I want to appeal to someone who appreciates good story. That's why it also says I'm a storyteller because I mean anyone can write, but telling a story to make people um, fever alongside the characters, that's the most important part for me as a reader as well. So if you like the story, that's my job well done.
Yeah. Like, I don't mind reading your story in the comfort of my home, maybe with a teddy bear close by. Um, But I can't imagine being with you at like a bonfire in the middle of the woods with everybody telling ghost stories or some creepy story. You would totally freak me out, which is great because you challenge my imagination.
I think what's the point of writing something if I don't challenge the imagination, or if anyone it doesn't challenge the imagination, because in the end you can only tell, there are only so many basic stories you can tell, and then it's up to the delivery, how the writer delivers that story and what kind of twists and turns he or she puts into this story that will set it apart. And how many stories? Oh, boy meets girl. That's why I only read one romance novel, because there are there aren't very many permutations to that unless you go into the love triangle. But then we don't get a romance novel and more something like Basic Instinct or so. So I don't know.
Right, but I think that the way that the love stories that were involved developed along the way, you know, or
Yeah,
even the lost love that occurred. I think
yeah,
that you told it in a very clear cut way that made it natural to the flow of the whole story. You know, it wasn't forced. It wasn't in there because we needed to have some romance in there. It was it was just the natural flow of the story and the chaoticness that goes with war or other things that developed along the way. And those grim reapers, oh my gosh, that was so creepy, the whole cemetery scene.
I okay. The cemetery scene was something that I wanted to do something different again with the death masks, with the priests of death. And before I set out to write the novel, I said, okay, I need to do some background on how the gods interact and what the gods do, blah blah blah, that sort of thing. And I said, okay, basically, what these death masks do is help people deal with pain, deal with grief, and whatever kind. So, I mean, they're there and they just tell you flat on, okay, yeah, he or she is dead. You're not. And he or she wants you to move on with your life because there is no point in standing still. And yes, you were taking a deep breath as if you wanted to ask something.
Yes. So, but that whole premise about paying the ferryman,
Yeah.
yeah, the way that played out in the cemetery, it was like, you're just like, what did they take? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I figured, okay, if you pay the ferryman to get someone back, just so to ask them questions, the price has to be very high. And I was like, okay, basically they took a huge chunk of that character's, well, purpose in life,
Don't give it away.
emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
And I was like, how do you get over that?
right, because it's missing. So you don't even know how to define it.
Exactly. And
And was it something good? Was it something bad? You
it's
know?
gone.
But that feeling that something's left unfinished.
Yep. And I mean, okay, I guess for some of us, there are parts in our lives that we would like to forget. All of them, all of us have them. But
Right. But I
not
don't
being
think the ferryman wanted that part of the life.
exactly. I mean, what's the point in giving something that you want to get rid of? But I mean, taking a character's driving motivator away, which is like what they did basically, um, make things interesting, to put it nicely.
Yes, they were very interesting. because you couldn't tell if they were really, really evil or somewhere in the middle. And what were they going to do with what they took? And,
I don't
it was
know.
just, but it does
I have no idea.
it was, well, it was just as twisted as the first chapter. But
Yeah.
every once in a while, you just like either struck that horrifying horror or that thing where you're like, kind of like a Stephen King movie mixed with a great suspense. And who did it?
Hitchcock,
When?
Hitchcock sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great. I
Well,
loved following it. I was
I hope you.
horrified. I was shocked. I had fun is the end
I
game.
I'm glad. I'm really glad that you had fun. That it spoke to you. The book. I mean, I was kind of nervous because I think I've gotten rejected from agents as well because of that first chapter, because it was just so straight blowing to the head. And well, but I think you got to stand out. If you do something and it's run of the mill, it doesn't matter because no one's going to read it. So, and I hope you can forgive me for the squirrel.
I'm sorry?
I hope you can forgive me for the squirrel.
Yeah. No. I like the squirrel. I was really getting to like him. I love the whole twist. And I just forgot the word for your it was like a Disney movie, I think, that had it.
Right,
What was the squirrel to the human?
right eye. Familiar. The
A
familiar.
familiar, yes.
Yeah.
I love the whole play of that into the storyline.
Yep.
It was so cute.
And
And he was so sarcastic. It was awesome.
I know, and it pained me to do what I did, but in the end, I was like, okay, nobody else. There is no one in this world or in this story who behaves like a hero, because to me, a hero is someone who sacrifices themselves for someone else, and the little guy does that, and so that makes him the entire hero of the book. So, not of the book, but in the book. So,
No, definitely. And you left us with a cliffhanger.
well, I think I can. Well, yeah, of course, there is a cliffhanger. For each book, there is a cliffhanger because I want you to continue reading. I mean, duh.
It was a great story. Thank you so much for sharing it. So tell me a little bit about your town that you live in so I can know how it
Oh,
played out in this story a little bit.
okay, well, the central place used to be around the church. As in every medieval town, village, you had the buildings surrounding the church and so on. And luckily, most of that actually survived the severe bombings we had during World War II. And part of my house is actually 300 years old as well. So
Wow, what's the maintenance on that like?
um, I have no problem with it because I pay my rent and my landlord has to deal with it. So I don't
That
know.
works.
And well, I mean, for me, as for you, if you live somewhere, you tend to not notice these things anymore. I don't notice. The only thing I notice is when the church bell rings at midnight. That's what annoys me. But every other time, I don't even notice the church
Why
or
does it ring
the
at midnight?
because they can. I don't know. It rings almost. It's supposed to ring every hour. So at midnight, you get 12 strikes. Yay! And yeah, because they've done so for time immemorial. I don't know for how long they rang the church bells there. So, and they never stopped. So, and other than that, I mean, it's changed over the years, and there used to be a festival here. It still is there, but back 20 years, 30 years back, it actually had a sort of Renaissance fair feel to it. So that you had the entire uh, yard around the church actually filled with artisans, medieval artisans, etc., etc. That part has gone away, but that was kind of magical, actually.
Yeah, it
So
looked like a wonderful place to grow up. Definitely different for the reader's perspective. It gives them a little idea of who you
yeah,
are and, where some of your ideas might have come from. But
some of it. Well,
it's exceptional storytelling.
thank you so much. I'm getting well. I'm never. I think I never will get used to high praise from anyone because um, I'm sitting here and saying, I just told a story. I just told a story. I wanted to tell it. It's amazing that you like it, that you enjoyed it so much. That makes me the happiest person alive. That I can reach people like that. So yay!
Yeah, no. And how many books are going to be in the series?
5.
5? Okay. And have you written any other series?
Not yet. Shattered Dreams is my first full end novel. There's nothing. I haven't done anything else. Not really before that. So yeah,
How many books are out in the series of 5 now?
3.
3.
The last one came out in September. Shattered
Wow.
Dreams, first one. Shattered Hopes is number 2, and Shattered Fears is number 3.
Wow. When's number 4 come out?
If all goes well, next year in September. If all goes well, it might not because I don't set myself a timetable because, well, there are days you don't want to write. You don't feel like writing. You're exhausted and go like, okay. And when I do write, I sit down for 1.5, 2 hours maybe, and I can crank out, I don't know, 1,800 words or so in 45 minutes or so. So if I write, I'm fast.
Wow. I can't turn out 1,800 words in a week, but that's great.
Yeah.
Well,
And
thank you so much for sharing so much about this epic fantasy. I really appreciate knowing more about you.
thank you.
My pleasure. Until next time, keep asking questions and talk to your authors online. They have a lot of hidden secrets, but Shattered Dreams is definitely a great story to read. It'll scare you, and you'll follow it through to the very last page.